Hey everybody, this is Carl back again for another X-Men solo uh, adventure comic book review. And today I'll be covering the origin of one of Marvel's most infamous villains, Apocalypse, aka Insomnor, aka Oscar Isaac. And of course, it's Egyptian. He's an Egyptian, and his name roughly translates to the Seven Lights. And of course, Apocalypse was created by Bob Layton, Louise Simonson, Jackson Geis. Yeah, so he has the most bonkers powers ever, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But before we do, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. If you're following me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl, you can leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of the character Apocalypse. And of course, follow me in my other social media platforms, like my Twitch. You can watch me stream live. Twitter, Patreon, Instagram. Yeah. Anyway, it's like a 4-issue mini-series, and I like the art style enough. It's okay because it pretty much was going with like a, kind of Egyptian feel, because it's kind of like everything is like very slanted, and like in most cases, the panels gives off like a scroll parchment like type of aesthetic, but most of the characters kind of feel like almost like hieroglyphs come to life in a way. It was, that's how it kind of gives me that kind of feel. So not one of my favorites, but I find it okay because I immediately grasped the concept of what they was trying to do with the illustration. So I give it props for that. Apocalypse mutant power. Apocalypse has constantly evolved to survive, increasing his powers over the centuries. His original ability to control his own atomic structure was augmented by celestial technology and further enhanced through the celestial armor to become the evolutionary caretaker. He was also exposed to 2 different techno-organic viruses over the years, which he assimilated and made his own. It has immortality, self-resurrection, a psychic link to Eternals, or Externals, I should say. Externals is kind of like, low-level Eternals, or just like a high-level mutants or something like that, because I covered it a little bit in my Gambit review. Self-atomic manipulation has the ability to control the atomic structure of his own body and can alter it at will. This means he can adapt his atomic structure to adversely. Apocalypse can perform the following feats: biomorphing, able to elongate like taffy, change into machinery, transform his arms and fists into various melee weapons like claws, axes, swords, tentacles, maces, scythes, shields, etc. Ranged weapons like plasma cannons, separate and reattach his own body parts, and even alter his physical appearance at will to blend in with the world around him. Regeneration, size alteration, self-power bestowal due to Insomnor's total control over his molecular and subatomic structure. Further bolstered by celestial technology, he can also constantly or spontaneously grant himself with a wide array of new superpowers at will. uh, matter manipulation, has shown the ability to disintegrate an opponent with a touch of his finger. Superhuman strength, durability, stamina, endurance, reflexes, psionic manipulation, like telekinesis, flight, telepathy, uh, cyberthy, thanks to his synergy with celestial technology bonded to him, due in part to his paradoxical jaunt of afflicting Cable with the Teal virus. Apocalypse gained the ability to mentally link with and control most any kind of tech and machinery he can reach out to. Celestial energy manipulation. Apocalypse seems to have a range of energy harnesses and projecting capabilities, either naturally derived or based on celestial technology built into his physical frame. He can use these metaphysical forces to accomplish a great many faculties, such as illusion and memory conjuration, matter reconstruction, healing, as well as total physical restoration of damaged or destroyed bodily tissues. Force fields, energy blasts, energy absorption, energy transfer, teleportation, sorcery. He can use magic, but the extent of his magical capabilities and knowledge are unknown. He's a super genius. Has the knowledge in certain areas of biology, primarily genetic engineering and mutation, and technology that are far in advance of contemporary science and technology. Omnilingual, can speak any human language, as well as including celestial. Expert combatant, although he doesn't often engage himself in personal combat, usually relying on servants such as his horsemen and other allies to fight for him. Apocalypse is a ruthless combatant and was trained at a young age in both hand-to-hand and with weapons such as swords. He often combines his powers alongside his martial skill in battle. So yeah, he is like stupidly broken. If you ever played a video game with Apocalypse as a main boss, you know all too well how broken this guy can be. Anywho, so the story begins with this nomadic tribe led by Baal, who are called like the Sandstormers, who pretty much are raiders, and they happened upon this baby in the desert, who apparently was left by his tribe because of how he looked, which is clearly in Sapanor. And the leader Baal gave him that name. And he knew there was like a prophecy that there will be a person to take down the Pharaoh, who comes with like a strange looking being with unique abilities and immortality that can one day take down the Pharaoh, Ramatut, which, if you've been paying attention to Loki series and the Ant-Man Quantumania, we know Kang the Conqueror, one of his aliases or variants is Ramatut, the Pharaoh of Egypt, one of the pharaohs of Egypt, who at one point went back in time to rule ancient Egypt. This is part of the story. Of course, a different part of the story, at least told in a different way through the lens of the Fantastic Four, who show up briefly here, met up with Ramatut and realized about like him coming from the future and put a stop to his machinations. Of course, Apocalypse in the story doesn't meet with the Fantastic Four at all, and they don't know about Apocalypse, being around this time. Of course, through like the present day, at least up to the point of some like, because growing up in the 90s, we knew about Apocalypse and being like the big bad and everything like that. And his origins was like, unless you was like, so inclined to look up about his origins, we surfacely knew that he was from like ancient Egypt, because like we was learning at the same time as like the X-Men were learning about his origins, and it's like left very vague, but we knew he was somewhere around ancient Egypt 5,000 years ago. And of course, some details was lost through time, but he was like the first depicted mutant in history. Now, of course, as I mentioned, like a different X-Men video that I was reviewing, mutants, because like the Celestials, these higher race of beings who created the Eternals and then the Deviants, they also experimented on certain groups of humans, the early humans, which because of this kind of experimentation, mucking with their DNA, would later in generations to come will start sprouting what would be known as mutants. And Insubranor is one of the first that's like the results of that experimentation that sprouted. And of course, then later on, you see like Namor being the next kind of like documented one. Of course, there'll be like other mutants sprouting throughout, but Apocalypse and Namor would be like the first two big iconic ones that will be known through history, and arguably probably the most powerful ones. Who knows, there probably have been like other ones prior to Apocalypse, but as far as recorded, documented in history, Apocalypse was first, then eventually Namor comes into play during World War II. So Paul takes this baby as his own and raised him in the tribe. And of course, everybody else, thought it was, of course, like they don't know what, they didn't even have even a term for it, for mutants. It's just these abominations or whatever. And of course, you thought like, the bigotry was, crazy in modern times. Multiply that by 2 during these ages, where there are no concept of like understanding of people that looks different. You have like certain people who treat people of color as horrific. Like, imagine somebody looking like Apocalypse. That is just like, very rarely, this is like a rare occurrence for like somebody in this civilization, like bald to like, because I argue that Ball wouldn't look twice at this kid if he wasn't special in some kind of way, and might fulfill some kind of end game for him in terms of Ramatut, given the fact that he has like a huge grievance with this guy. You will learn later on in the story progresses. But despite others' protests, because Ball will kill anybody who like stand against him as far as like his final decision, he took the kid in and started raising his own, and then training him. And of course, as Apocalypse grows, into his like 20s, whatever, well enough into his adulthood, he views Ball as his father, and the only person who actually gave a damn about him, despite everybody else treating him like an outsider. Even among an outsider class, Ball was the only one that actually, cared for him and helped him along. And so, he is trained. He knows, this whole survival of the fittest type of mentality, given the fact that the harsh landscape that these nomads had to live in, there was no room for like, mercy. You can see like Apocalypse's mindset was birthed in this exact moment because of like the time period he lives in. He eventually kind of got stuck in his ways, and when you get older, you tend to get stuck in your certain ways. So, transfer that into the modern times. He just like, ironically, he didn't evolve in a way. He got that same survival of the fittest mindset. The weak, shall perish, only the strong shall survive. And he even applied that to even his own kind. Like, we gotta be better than even our own people. So we see that Ramatut pretty much like has his own little court. Got Logos, his advisor, and probably the most like for that time period, the most scientific one. We got Kang here, who comes from the year 3000, who has like better understanding of science. So he pretty much took over this kingdom quick fashion, utilizing honestly his technology to like not to endanger the timeline. It's just like in subtle ways, so that way it still fit within like the time period, because you can't have like forklifts during the age of Egyptian pharaohs. So you have to use other machinations that fit for the time period, but still far exceeds anything they will probably be privy to. So he's able to like quickly like it's like me going in a time where like humanity was still like evolving from primates or like caveman times, and I can just easily build like huts because I have some kind of preconceived notion. I'm not like I'm no construction worker or architect, but I have like a rudimentary understanding of like gathering materials to build huts in a better fashion than they probably would, or at least quicker than they probably would have came out with. And I would probably be looked on as some kind of god, by those standards, because they won't have any kind of preconceived notions of technology or how like certain functions. So Kang here benefited from that because he wants to conquer. And of course he has this general called Osmandius who seeks the throne. And of course he has the sister Nefri, who Kang sees as like a suitable queen, even though she obviously doesn't have eyes for him at all. She is upset the fact that this stranger coming out of nowhere and then quickly took power, which should have rightfully have been her and her brothers, but she doesn't care for what her brother Osmandius has turned into, because as she points out at one point, like, because how ruthless he is, like, you used to read me stories as a little girl, and look at you now. It's like, oh my god, you turned to just a vile person. But she kind of flip-flops halfway through the story. You'll see why. So Logos goes to his pharaoh Kang, Ramatut, and tells him about uh uh there was rumors of his, because he seeks uh Apocalypse. He never knew exactly where, because since it's a nomadic tribe, they always on the move. He never knew where exactly uh Apocalypse will sprout up, but he knew it'd be around this point in time. As soon as word got out that a rumor of this particular looking figure uh has been seen, Kang is like orders Osman, hey, bring this guy to me. I need him, because he knows about Apocalypse and his great power, and how, what, you know uh the level of threat he will pose later on in the future. So he wants to will that power for his own. So he wants to be able to take him, manipulate him for his own gains, to further use for his conquering needs. But all the while, Ball takes Kang, not Kang, Insapanor to the depths of this underground passageway in the middle of the desert that foretells of Apocalypse one day taking down Rama Tut, even though to everybody else, at least for most people, Rama Tut comes from the stars and like from gods and everything like that. But Ball's like, no, that's utter crap. He was a regular person just like anybody else. Long time ago, our tribe found him. He looked ill. We cared for him. We make sure we patched him up. One day he was just gone. He came back and then enslaved a lot of us and killed most of the others. Only a few of us, like me, got away. And so that's where Ball gets his ire for Rama Tut from, because the utter betrayal and enslavement of his people. So he wants, in a sense, is using Apocalypse, but he still cares for him. But he sees that he was the only one that might match Rama Tut's power. And they soon get inside this room where, because all this technology coming from Kang, they don't understand it, but Ball knows something in here will help bring Rama Tut down. Of course, Apocalypse just grabs one of the technologies, like, no, his Ball's like, no, we're not ready. We need to study this first. And it's like, Apocalypse ain't trying to wait. Like, well, if it's going to bring him down, we're going to take it now. And of course, this caused a chain reaction underground, while at the same time as Ozymandias and his troops are battling against the Sandstormers. And of course, few survive, like Ozymandias, but because of the collapse, injures both Ball and Apocalypse. But Apocalypse, given his power, slowly starting, like, because it's only there's early phases, it eventually starts growing and growing. But he, at this point, is immortal and can heal pretty fast. So he really isn't in no danger. But his father, his leg is broken, and essentially he's like, he's old, his leg's broken, and he's like he knows he's about to die soon, but not before he makes sure his Apocalypse makes it out of this cave in and takes down the Pharaoh. And of course, this is kind of like, Apocalypse eventually didn't bury, but he lays down his father, father figure, who is the only one who cared for him, because nobody else does. He was the first one to experience hate and bigotry and like, no understanding from anybody but this one person. Everybody else treat him like a freak. And so now, it sows the seeds of Apocalypse viewpoint towards society as a whole. And of course, we see like is Nefri here. Like I said, it's like very like if you like drew this and put it on a wall, this looks like a hieroglyphic kind of like illustration. Matter of fact, the next Spider-Verse film should have some kind of like Egyptian art style with this kind of thing. And of course, like Logo's trying to warn Ramatut, nobody's privy to who he really is. They, these Logos suspects that he, was later confirmed that like he's not from this era. He comes from somewhere beyond, like an outsider from a different place, because the way he's able to his knowledge of certain things, the way he does certain things, just like it's like, okay, something's up. And he's still trying to do his duties, and it's like warning him about Nefri and she's a viper, she's gonna be threatening your rule. And of course Kang dismisses like I know better than you. Why you have a advisor if like you're not gonna utilize it? Yeah, sure, you're from the future, but if that was the case, why waste your time with an advisor? Of course, like here's where like Ball regales Inside Minoru of the appearance of Kang in their time, and his ship, Kang's ship or time machine or whatever, comes in a form of a sphinx. Why? I don't know. Maybe he knew where he was going and he needs to remain inconspicuous, so he took it in the shape of a sphinx. So it probably won't ruin the timeline so much, because rather it being some kind of weird space station. Matter of fact, now I'm thinking about it, because speaking of space, how cool it would be for like a period film, but it's like during like the Egyptian age, and one tribe trying to take down a kingdom, and all of a sudden like a predator shows up, and is depicted in like a hieroglyph about this a particular predator showing up in this time period, because they love hot weather. Nothing hotter than the desert. So Apocalypse eventually crawls out of the caverns and is met up by Logos, who takes him in and it's like, you're destined to take down Ramatut, but you're not ready yet. You still need to heal, get stronger. So what he does is wrap him up in bandages to disguise him in a way, and play pretend like like a slave and everything like that until the time is right. However, his powers are starting to grow, and everybody, including Ozymandias, sees him like floating in the air, gathering energies and stuff like that. Of course, Apocalypse thinks it's like Osiris who's bestowing him like this kind of gift, and he's hallucinating this Egyptian god, warning him about certain things like Nefri is like a don't trust her, which upon reading it's like Logo saying not to trust her, and this god, whether or not it's in Apocalypse's head, which I doubt, is warning him against her, which, as you see towards the tail end, this girl is not evil, but just like an opportunist, clearly. Because she sees, like, the failings of Ramatut and what he did to their lands and what he did to her brother, who probably wasn't like this from when she was growing up, but now this is what he turned into, this kind of vicious, warmonger. So she will do whatever she can to make sure she put a stop to it, but only for her royal bloodline's benefit. And while Apocalypse is getting, like, brought in and chained up, it was around this time when, in like a different story of the Fantastic Four, where they first meet Kang the Conqueror, they travel back in time to ancient Egypt. They was found, brought to the court, and met with Ramatut, and he used this ray gun to neutralize their powers, which he later will use against Apocalypse. Like I said, Fantastic Four, they only show up, like, you only see them a couple of times, but they don't interact with Apocalypse. They don't even know Apocalypse was like a thing here. The only concern was them trying to get back to their present and put a stop to Ramatut's / Kang's machinations in this time period, which you never will see an all-out battle between Apocalypse and Kang the Conqueror. Which, upon reading, I was thinking to myself, man, there are some really big dog type of Marvel villains that you would think should have some kind of event where they have like this all-out brawl. Yeah, Doctor Doom, Kang the Conqueror, Apocalypse, who else? Maybe like a Red Skull or something. I'm not accounting like Thanos. I guess you could count Thanos, but I think he's way too big even for, well, it's just like definitely not Galactus. But these guys are like, the big dogs of villains, like can actually really wreck shit if they want to on like a reality warping type of scale if they want to, like planet breakers if they wanted to. So just have these four kind of like, because Doctor Doom can go toe to toe with a lot of these guys if he really put his mind to it, with his like expertise in all the sciences and magic, to make him like a devastating force in his own right, going against Kang, like a conqueror from the future, Thanos, and the guy who wiped out half the universe, and then you got Apocalypse, like just like an immortal, just demigod in a way, the way he can just just like a broken superpowers. He can pretty much, like, these four, like, I just want to see like a all out, like, see who's the biggest bad of them all, which obviously probably would be Thanos, but Kang obviously is no slouch. But anyway, but like Kang and Kang and Kang and Apocalypse, I was kind of hoping to see like some kind of fight between these two, like a real fight. But anyway, we don't get that, which is a shame. So Thanos is, Apocalypse was saved by Nefri, who is nursing him in her boudoir. And of course, she wants to see his face. She knows he's destined to save them from Ramatut's rule. But of course, he doesn't want her to see his face, because people always like run away, think he's freakish or whatever. But she tells him, because Logos tells him about the Sphinx that will hold a lot of, Kang's otherworldly type of machinations that they don't understand, but they know is a very essential thing that help him wield all this power. Apocalypse wants to turn that against him. So Neferi's trying to lead him towards the Sphinx, but they are stopped by Ozymandias and his forces after they torture and then eventually kill Logos, because they eventually find out that, which is never explained, but I guess, Kang, kind of figured it out or knew beforehand. But like, well, if he knew beforehand, he wouldn't have trusted him as his advisor. But I don't know, maybe it's just like a chess game. He had to be in place in order to get Apocalypse in place. But he's probably just figuring it out along the way that he was holding the one person that Kang wanted, and he, kept it from him to try to use against him. So he's like done in, and the only other person that Apocalypse thought like, okay, Neferi and Logos is probably like, they probably care for me, but Neferi eventually saw his face turns her head and like consider him like, like a freak too, but not in so many words, but like her body language spoke volumes. And Logos, eventually was killed by Ozymandias. So he just considered like, oh, this civilization just like takes out the weak so easily, and I have nobody that really cares for me. They either use me or just don't care for me at all. So Ozymandias tied up because Logos isn't dead yet, but he eventually will die. But he and Neferi was tied up in front of the square, in front of everybody, to be made examples of. And Kang wants Apocalypse to bow down to him. But now after he reveals to everybody from the bandages what he really looks like, which shocks everybody. They look into like, an odd looking being, because his pale bluish skin and the lines around his lips and head. And thinking like he probably could possibly find love from Neferi obviously isn't possible. So that further devastates him. But trying to take out Kang right then and there, Kang hits him with the gun, even though why he pulls out something that advanced in front of Egyptian people who won't understand this, but maybe they chalk it up as some kind of, supernatural power given by Egyptian gods. Who knows? But that should have been like a devastating thing in the timeline. So thinking like, oh, Thanos, I keep calling him Thanos, because you know how big bad these guys are. Thinking Apocalypse is down for the count, because the gun should have neutralized his powers. And Neferi is tied up in this underground pit full of snakes. One of them, like some massive monster snake somehow. Don't know how they got something like that there. But Apocalypse shows up to save her. Probably the first act of heroism he actually tried to do. But he was met with like shunness from her. And she quickly runs to her brother. It's like, keep him away from me. Despite him trying to save her life from all these vipers. Completely ungrateful. And this kind of further cements his hatred. So he just declared for the first time of his now chosen name, Apocalypse. He will be there for everybody's end. And you see him like, doing like size alteration and everything like that. Just like the early phases of what we'll know his powers to be. So he ran off into the desert after he burst loose, taking down a lot of the Pharaoh's guards in the process. And Osmandius eventually finds Kang's secret lair, where not only Apocalypse is seizing the technology for himself to like gain more power and then destroy all that was Kang's. It was around the same time where in the Fantastic Four kind of book where they first meet Kang, this four is trying to take down Ramatut, and of course, knowing that he's about to lose, he takes some kind of escape pod thing and goes back to his present time, never to be seen in this era again. And of course, as like this facility is about to explode and collapse, thinking Kang plays some kind of self-destruct button, and I'm pretty sure in that story between this quartet and Kang that might have been the case, but reality it was Apocalypse. I'm not sure. I haven't read the story of their first interaction with Kang the Conqueror, but I imagine that I'll be surprised if they even hint at what went on here as far as why the whole place went to self-destruct mode. But the Fantastic Four went back to their own timeline, never aware about Apocalypse whatsoever. And of course, Osmandius in this room trying to gain the knowledge in order to overthrow Ramatut is quickly overwhelmed by the future events, including ones with Apocalypse and what he's meant to be. Turn this guy into like living sand or something like that. It looked like they killed him, but now he's like went from hero to zero really quickly, and now he was the one who all that little stuff that in the future the X-Men will find records of Apocalypse and everything like that. Osmandius is the one who's forever detailing with a hammer and chisel of the exploits of Insabanur, completely like under his thrall and everything like that. Not sure if I'm pretty sure he kind of eventually died off or been taken out or something, but he never seized the throne. Nefri by right, she seized the throne and became queen for a period, because 50 years later Apocalypse returned. She's 50 years older and he hasn't changed a day, and she, as Apocalypse comments, you still never want to lay eyes on me. But I only came, cause he just came back just to mock her, essentially, because he just points it out like, hey, I will always be here at all of your ends, because I am Apocalypse. So this is pretty much like the origin tales of Apocalypse, and like why he is the way he is, and the early stuff of how his powers like sprouted. Of course, like I said, as I went through his power set, he further enhanced it thanks to celestial technology throughout time. And why when he first encounters like the X-Men and other Marvel heroes during the modern times, that's why his powers are so freaking broken, because he can just do whatever the heck not everything he wants, but darn near. So it's like, and why he is so hard to defeat? It's not enough that he's immortal, but combine that with the techno-organic virus emerging in his biology, along with like celestial technology he merged in with himself, making him just stupid powerful. And like, you need somebody like a god to just completely annihilate him, just down to the last atom. But even then, with celestial technology, you see from the Eternals, they always manage to do like a resurrection. So even atomizing him probably still won't cut it. You cannot get rid of this guy. But that is like the origin story of Apocalypse. Pretty well told. I love the whole Egyptian aesthetic. The art style is kind of mid. Like I get, because I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. Because I know what they was going for with this Egyptian kind of aesthetic, with kind of like the characters kind of look in some cases like hieroglyphs come to life. So I appreciate it, but I, don't love it either. It's like I can do without ever seeing it again, to be honest. But given like the time period it was, telling the story, it makes sense. But that was Apocalypse. Short, sweet, to the point. So I forgot to add this character to the list. Because I will do not only X-Men, I will do one X-Force and one X-Factor adventure stories as far as team ups, because they count as X-Men-ish. Just like, just kind of like a splinter group of the X-Men. So they need to be counted. Like, I don't want to just feel like I neglected them. But the next solo story that I'll be covering is X-23. Yes, that should be a roughly short one too. But I'll get to that soon. But let me know in the comments below what you think of Marvel's Apocalypse. And I will see you all later. So take care. Have a pleasant weekend.